the orders to destroy that evidence? That case hasn't even gone to court. Why was the wood burned? Why was the shack burned down? You see, in the John Kennedy assassination, after I cross-fought all that evidence for 8 years, I came to the conclusion that if you broke that entire assassination down from the handling of the evidence to the commission hearings of how they investigated it, you could get the entire espionage arrangement, domestic violence or international violence, the way the CIA and the Pentagon conducts espionage across this country. And it is a formula that works in every one of these cases, every single one of these conspiracy cases. No evidence is available. Now, this house was burned down, so those in the Santa Cruz area who do not trust the officials, the investigating officials up there, I hear over and over again, and I believe every word of it. And I know it for a fact because I've called them at the time of the audit trial. They do not look at the evidence or get the proper witnesses. Look who had the cabin across the way from where those boys looked. Those are little research you can do this week. Who had the lookout cabin where those 4 boys looked that was also burned down? There was a lookout cabin that knew their pattern across the canyon. Find out who lived there, where they came from, what state, what kind of a car they had, and see if you can connect. Some of you up there can get your heads together now and see who rented there, who saw them, get the description from the neighborhood or the people camping, the lookout cabin of those 4 boys. And then go to the youth conservation camp or ask the Santa Cruz public officials who gave the orders to destroy that. You see, I always said if you knew one thing, you'd be on way solving who killed John Kennedy. Who gave the orders to take John Kennedy's car to Dearborn, Michigan 2 days after his murder and destroy it totally on the inside without counting the bullets, the bullet direction? We've talked about this so many times on this show. You could tell how far the gunman stood by the way the bullets go in. You could tell the location of the crossfires by where the bullets were found. You could tell how many bullets went off by examining the car. A lot could be told by the evidence, and somebody had to go in. Now, the Youth Conservation is a state organization having to do with the penal system in some way. So find out who gave the orders to destroy that. There should be a law against somebody in the whatever department, the district attorney's office, the sheriff, the police department, whoever touches any evidence. Once a crime is committed, should be getting a fine and 10 years in jail. The person who orders it destroyed. Not the person who goes in, not the kids, but the one who orders it destroyed. Now, in the paper today, there's a little article in the San Jose Mercury. You wouldn't believe it. Frazier evidence burned up. Now, I said all along that John Frazier was a patsy for the same people. The Oda family was not killed by John Frazier. I do not believe it. I believe he may have had a part. He may have been a lookout down at the gate. He's a patsy for something very big in the Santa Cruz area. And I have said this on shows. I've done shows on the Oda family on the radio here. Here's your article today. District Attorney Peter Chang was cleaning out the evidence locker at his office Wednesday of what appeared to be materials from John Frazier's murder trial 18 months ago. Asked if the cleaning out of evidence in the case was a result of an appeal by Frazier having been turned down by the Supreme Court, Chang replied the evidence being destroyed were things not used in the trial. He said he received no word yet of a decision on Frazier's appeal. Now, here is the point. Frazier appeals to the Supreme Court, I want another trial. And if he had another trial, and if the evidence were available, Frazier would not be convicted. Sirhan asked for a trial that was turned down by the United States Supreme Court last week, 7-0. New evidence that he did not kill Robert Kennedy. The gun that was used, that Sirhan allegedly used, was thrown away the night after Robert Kennedy was killed, or the same night. I can't even remember which. I have all the information at home. It was thrown away by the Los Angeles Police Department. You see, in Dealey Plaza, John Kennedy's car was destroyed, a lamppost was removed, a sign was removed, the clothing of John Connolly was sent to the dry cleaner, so you couldn't tell whether the bullets were entry or exit. When the doctors who operated on him said the bullets couldn't have come from the direction you say, just bring the clothing, then the FBI said, well, the clothing was dry cleaned. By the time it gets to the FBI, it's laundered and dry cleaned. Okay, the Frazier evidence is all destroyed. I could mention, 100, 120 cases of this, of lesser known people who have appealed whose evidence is destroyed. But when these well-known cases are happening so flagrantly, it seems to me that people in that community should ask for the removal of Peter Chang and the entire law enforcement until the truth comes out. There are enough living people, if they're not afraid of their life, to attest to a multiple group of people involved in the Oda trial. And it really makes me angry that this week not only is all the evidence done to show who could have killed those 4 boys, but now the evidence is gone with the Frazier, and a lot of people are linking the murders up there to the Oda murder, to the massacres that are taking place up in Santa Cruz right now. And it's more than speculation. I had called a lot of public officials at the time of the Oda trial. One was a Mr. Jackson, who's now handling the Mullen boy. The same public officials that were handling Frazier are handling Mullen. And he'll get the same isolation, the same railroading, and all the evidence here that proved conspiracy up in the Santa Cruz area is being destroyed like it was with Robert Kennedy or John Kennedy, and I think it's terrible. Now, they say youth conservation group. It says a group of young people, a crew of youngsters. Get that, youngsters? Okay, here's getting really mad this week. There's so much news we can't even touch it, but we're going into the Stennis shooting in Washington, D.C., a group of youngsters. When the congressman was shot, Senator John Stennis was shot, and the FBI said, we can't find who did it. Now, the FBI gets in on the case. The local police don't handle the evidence. It's not good enough for them. They might find something, but the FBI, that's a clue of a conspiracy, gets in on it. There's a little law called the Anti-Assassination Act, so any public official that is shot at, the FBI gets it. Well, then they just sweep up all the evidence. So if they plan these things and sweep it up, there's nothing left for the local policemen. I'm not anti-police. I'm not anti-police force or anti-sheriff, but these special tax squads work as a chain, and they sweep up all your little goodies. So John Stennis was shot. He was coming home, and the article in the paper last week, dated February 27th, said they gave up looking for the person who shot him. The FBI was pessimistic, the Washington police, and the headline, the lead article says $70,000 posted for 2, in quotes, punks. Now, it goes on to say, in their search for the person who attacked John Stennis, they were looking for 2 black males, 16 to 18 years old, Stennis says, who took their money and said, now we're going to shoot you anyway. The police summed it up this way: I guess they were just a couple of roving young punks, probably riding around town in a stolen car, and they were scared to death when they found out it was a senator. So you have your young men up at the conservation camp, turning the adults against the youth again, the permissive society. You have the black here, the young punks, turning against John Stennis. You see, they have no evidence at all except this fact, and then they say, and there's your probablys and your stolen car, right? Well, there's an article that followed 3 days later, because Mr. Stennis is getting a little better now. See, Senator Stennis is on the road to recovery. And he still describes 2 black males who said, we're going to shoot you anyway. But he's getting a little better. But now he's a little more sure of the evidence, and they're a little bit older. And he describes men much older and taller. Now what are they? A few days ago, Senator Stennis provided an additional description of the men who shot him. They were in their 20s or 30s, and they were 6 feet tall, weighed 190 to 195 pounds, with close-cropped hair. Now, this is a little different than those little skinny 14-year-olds running around. I should think they could be 30, and they're 195 pounds. That's hardly young punks. That's a full-grown man. 5 feet 8, he thinks they were now. 5 feet 8. 195 or 6 feet tall, the article says. They could be more than 6 feet tall, 20 to 30 years old, and 195 pounds. So you've got a range now where they've grown a lot, and they've gained a lot, and they've put on about 14 years, see, because now his recall is coming better. Well, I got a bulletin here from Wilf. It's a legislative bulletin dated February the 16th, which is an interesting bulletin. Just prior to the time that this came out, at the time that Senator John Stennis was shot. I'm reading it directly. This is quote, "The Senate Democratic Caucus this year demanded that all presidential nominees promise to testify before the Senate committee whenever requested as a condition for confirmation." And that includes Roy Ash and Weinberg and the whole team that are running our budget. It says, I go back to quote, "The caucus approved 35-1 the resolution that was introduced by Senator John Stennis of Mississippi and Senator Jared Nelson of Wisconsin to strictly limit the use of executive privilege." I'll continue, then I'll comment. "The resolution requires any executive branch witness summoned to testify to appear and answer questions. He can only refuse to answer the question if he obtained a letter from the president invoking executive privilege. And if the committee decided that the plea was not well taken, it could still direct the witness to answer. Further refusal would be referred to the full Senate for possible Senate action. A special committee was established to draft guidelines in testimony from the president's advisors. Stennis, who's now in serious condition in a hospital after being shot by a robber, and so forth, wanted to take the resolution into the Senate rules. No similar action has been taken in the House." Now, we don't know how far this got when John Stennis was shot, because if you try to kill a man who clips Richard Nixon's wings, or Roy Ash's wings, or Caspar Weinberger's, all of our budget, our OEO, our welfare, child care center, you name it, it's all under the White House roof, what they do, how they spend their money, whether they want to give $22 billion to North and South Vietnam and nothing at home, they decide. So John Stennis wanted them to account. They've taken everything from Congress they can. They're just sitting there doing nothing. All he's asking is that will you please answer some questions for us instead of saying immunity. John Stennis was shot, and they try to cover, that's a cover story, 2 young punks, probably in a car. I'm moving along fast, I know, but I think you can get it all. The cover story is so pat, no conspiracy, just a little guys on a little robbery, a couple of kids on a spree. Oh my, they found a congressman, we better kill him. It wasn't that at all. It was 2 big hunks, 30 years old, 195 pounds, 6 feet tall, who knew just exactly who they were going to get, and they didn't want his money. They didn't walk up and say, "I'm going to kill you." They said, "Give me your money." And when he gave them their money, they said, "Now we're going to kill you," and they left. So then the little conspiracy law comes in, and you bet anything they're not going to find those punks, because they have gone out of this country somewhere, and they have rewarded. They have stopped the whatever was happening on the Senate floor, and I hope the other senators have the courage or follow through, that the White House does not have immunity for everything that's happening. The Oaks trial came up in Santa Rosa, the killing of the man who left the Indian group over at Alcatraz. He was murdered in cold blood, and they tried to get away with that. The men who murdered him were let out. It was supposed to be involuntary manslaughter. And the testimony came out this week. The judge, it's too late to change the charges, but the district attorney has now admitted that what happened up in that Santa Rosa area, that these men were told it's open season on coons and Indians. That means if you get them, it doesn't matter. Well, I know it's been open season on hippies and campers and kids out like those boys up in Santa Cruz, or the girls hitchhiking. It's open season. And any employee or person who works for the investigative agencies who wants to spread terror in the community and turn around the fear against the young people, he can go ahead and do it. And the same thing with Mr. Oaks. They tried to kill him in a bar in San Francisco, the leader of the Indian group. He was an activist, one of the most outspoken, Richard Oaks, and he was hit on the head and unconscious in a coma for a long, long time, and recovered to go up to Santa Rosa and be killed because it was open season on the Indians and coons. Larry Shears, I just have about 3 more minutes. Larry Shears is an agent provocateur who worked for the Treasury Department, the Department of Narcotics, who broke the plot to kill Cesar Chavez last year, and his life has been in danger ever since. He exposed the plan of the Treasury Department and several agents to kill Cesar Chavez. Larry Shears has been running, and you can believe